If you search YouTube like me and try to find content about creating bots or trading algorithms using Sierra Chart and Claude Code, you've probably found that there's not much information out there. This is the opening range breakout study running in Sierra Chart, written from scratch and running in replay mode. This is what we're building today. Claude Code writes it. We don't write any C++. And the prompt and the study are yours to download for free. Now that I successfully deployed a live strategy to the market, I wanted to create a YouTube series on how to do the same so someone like me that had no content could get a head start into building their own strategies into Sierra Chart today. So let's get into the video. So we'll start with stage one. Stage one is finding your edge and testing different market theories so you can find what might be profitable for you to implement into the market. And if you're looking for AI to find your strategy and tell you something that's profitable, sorry to say, but you're probably out of luck. AI is great at implementing your ideas into the market so you can test them, but it's very poor at finding a true edge. I found my edge by watching the market live for multiple years until I could find a repeatable pattern and sets of patterns to build my own trade book. So for me, finding an edge is literally just watching the market, looking for patterns. And AI cannot help you with this. That's the truth that a lot of gurus won't tell you. Like I mentioned, you still want to do your research and test different things like auction market theory, ICT, or whatever clicks in your brain to then try to test and build your own strategies in the market. And one tip I'll tell you is if you're watching the market live and see a pattern that you want to test, mark that timestamp and the exact sequence of events that happen so you can then build into a backtest. Now what we're looking for here is an exact set of rules and definitions so we can take to a backtest and test live. So once you have an idea and you kind of know what you want to test and can define exactly the right parameters to enter and exit the trade, what you can do is then go into your backtest here. And what I'll show you today is I'll show you how to build a strategy using the opening range breakout. I've covered opening range breakout backtesting in my past videos, so if you want to check it out, look there. So the way I do this is I backtest in Python using the raw Sierra Chart intraday data file. So that's a SCID file that Sierra Chart has natively. What's powerful about this is it's on your own disk, so you can have Python read these raw data files and give you binary exact tick information so you can run through your backtest more accurately than a lot of other platforms will give you. And here, the backtest method is critical. When I was going through my backtesting, I introduced several biases that made my backtest look great on paper, but actually it was full of biases and incorrect. So you really have to work on your pipeline to build out a solid backtest with no errors. So no look-ahead biases, no impossible fills. You have to go through a lot of trial and error in this step if you are, like me, not natively a coder, but using AI to build out your backtest pipeline. If you like a shortcut to do this and want to see how I build my backtest, I'm including a link in the description below. And if you sign up for the newsletter, I'll send you a direct link to the GitHub repo with all the code for this video, as well as my other content. So you can use that as a starting place for when you're building your backtest and Sierra Chart strategy files. So I'm not going to cover too much on the backtest today, but what I do want to cover next is once you have your backtest and once you actually want to code your strategy into Sierra Chart, what we're going to do is go to stage 3, which is coding the signals. Now, Claude Code is great at creating these signals into Sierra Chart. It just needs a little bit of direction. My method to code these strategies is Sierra Chart actually ships a lot of example strategies. So what you can do is point Claude Code at those example strategies, which I'll show you a demo shortly, and then use that as a baseline for coding your strategy into Sierra Chart. In this picture on this chart here, you'll see that this is the opening range breakout with the signal arrow here where I would enter the trade. Sierra Chart calls these studies Advanced Custom Study Interface and Language Studies, so ACSIL studies. And what's great about this is it's compiled C++ that runs natively in Sierra Chart with no sandbox. So basically you can run these strategies at tape speed and be able to execute extremely fast and accurately. As we transition from coding the signals, the step that I don't see anyone else really doing is going back to backtest based off the signals. The great thing about Sierra Chart is you can export all your raw indicator data along with the raw tick data and compare those two to the actual backtest that you performed. So I found many errors during this step where I basically made a backtest engine that would test the actual output from Sierra chart and compare it to my Python backtest. And surprisingly, there's a lot of differences even though it was using the same tick data. A lot of this has to deal with things, if you're not familiar with contract roll dates or just having wrong hours in your backtest. Highly recommend this step. For me, it was critical and one of the most essential steps that I don't hear many people talking about. So going from backtest to signal to then backtesting the signal on the actual data in Sierra chart gets you further than probably about 99% of people that are trying to go through this method. So combined with the SCID and ACSIL is basically two languages to have two different jobs. So C++ is your acting, and then Python is your research. Your SCID is your data spine. And then on the other hand, you have your C++ ACSIL data, which is what Sierra chart uses to act. So you have your indicators, then you also have to have something that executes on those signals. So that brings us to our next step, which is wiring the order management. So for me, I create a separate study to execute on these signals. So for me, my edge is never just on the signal alone. A lot of my edge exists in the way I execute orders. So that's either adding on to trades or exiting trades if they're not working out based off of other separate studies. So for example, a good example for this would be if you have an opening range breakout and then you really rely on VWAP as part of your confirmation. And if your opening range breakout breaks below your VWAP, you exit the trade. So having that logic is essential in your order management. But the other downside of this is now your order management can introduce a lot of other bugs too. So bringing this all in full circle, what you need to do is then observe and fix bugs as you go. So you'll be fixing bugs in your order execution, you'll be finding biases that you might have missed during your backtest, and eventually, if you go through that iteration and loop enough, you'll be able to implement your strategy live into the market. So with this overview, I want to show you how I would go about building the opening range breakout strategy into Sierra chart. All right, so now moving over to Sierra chart and Claude Code. We can see here on the left is I have my Sierra chart within my folder that I'm working out of, and here you can see all the data in Sierra chart/data, and all these SCIDs are contract information. So what we'll do is we'll work on the opening range breakout on both ES and NQ. So I have about a year's worth of data in my data folder. Here you'll also see the ACS source, which is all your C++ code. So we'll build an opening range breakout strategy in this folder here that will deploy to Sierra chart. So what I'll do is I'll supply a prompt to build the opening range breakout in the code repo too, so you can test it out on your own. So I have this pretty extensive prompt that I'll be using to build out the opening range breakout strategy that we'll be using as an example. So what I'll first do is I'll just point Claude Code at the prompt. So I'll just do @prompt build this. So what we're going to do is I'll just point Claude Code at this, and while it's doing the build, I'll go ahead and review the strategy with y'all. So here's the prompt. I'm basically saying that I want to build the opening range breakout strategy, and I point this prompt to the ACSIL studies that Sierra chart comes with. So if I go back to this folder for Sierra chart, the ACS source, I'm basically referencing that, which has a lot of great examples on how to build out different studies and different indicators. What I'm asking it to do is define the opening range breakout based off of time. So here I have like the marketing opening time, the marketing range in minutes, session end times. So you'll see all of these as separate inputs that we'll be able to use inside of Sierra chart to customize our indicator. And then what we'll have here is we'll tell it what we actually want with the different things called subgraphs. And the subgraphs are just basically visuals that you'll see on Sierra chart. And then here we're also just telling it that we want it to carry its data, so then we can actually execute on it in the future. So what I'll do is I'll probably fast forward this part. I'll share this prompt with you so you can read it on your own as well. But for here, let's go ahead and speed this up a bit. All right, so we got our first bit of data back. So what we'll do here is kind of just review where Claude Code is at right now. So right now it has the rule restated. So it's basically telling us the rule that it's defining for the opening range breakout. Next, that it has some ambiguities that it made some assumptions for. So this is really important where you can catch some biases. So I'm not going to review all these, but you can pause the video here and review them yourself. But it's really good information and really good practice to read all these ambiguities so you know where biases might be and you can fix it yourself. But for us, the goal of today is just to get the indicator in and seeing what it looks like. So if we hit enter here, we now have the study coded here in the opening range breakout. So we have our C++ code on the right. If we make this bigger here, so we can review the opening range breakout. It has all the notes at top. It has a study name. It's called OPTD studies. And what you'll see is all the notes here with the assumptions. And then it's going to have our exact opening range breakout strategy and all these example subgraphs and inputs. So from here, we are able to deploy it. I have a quick deploy prompt here. So right now you can see it's running our deploy prompt, which will deploy it to Sierra chart. So right now it's running this deploy, which will add it to our Sierra chart folder and allow us to build the strategy within Sierra chart on the right here. So now that it's finished, let's go ahead and do a quick review of what the final response was. So it says that every ACSIL call is in the source with nothing guessed. So it deployed it. These are the summaries of what it created. So these are all the inputs and subgraphs that we have. It also has a note that it deviated from rule B. Doing a quick review, this looks like it's just might be an issue on the very first day of the chart that we have set at. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that once we load it. Then also has a chart starts mid-session issue that we'll need to validate as well. So again, really good notes here. You don't want to just blindly test and believe that it one-shotted it. What you want to do is validate and make sure that your strategy is actually implemented correctly. So now that we have it deployed, what we can do here is click Analysis, then Build Custom Studies, DLL. So our opening range breakout strategy should be in here. So you'll see right here now, we have OPTD, the opening range. So we'll just select this and go ahead and press Build and build with Visual C++. So what we're watching here is the build output log to see if it actually generated correctly. So now that we see it did generate correctly, what we can do is add it to the chart. So let's go ahead now and then click Analysis, then Studies. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add a custom study, and you'll see we have our opening range breakout strategy here. So if I now click this, we can see all the different inputs we did. So we'll have to program this and set these inputs to our market time. So for me, market opens, since I'm on the West Coast, it opens at 6:30. The opening range we're going to set to 30 minutes. We'll leave that as is. And my session in time here is at 1 o'clock. So we'll just do 1300. Confirmation closes. So if you look at the prompt, what we want to do is have a number of candle closes outside of the opening range that then triggers that signal. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this to 5. Your backtest would actually define this. So what we want to do is define that based off of our backtest. So here we actually gave ourselves the option to use the opening range width as a risk, or also just risk points. So what we can do is we can be generous and just do 50 points here, or we can do the opening range width, so the total bottom and top of the opening range. And if we say that, we want to target 2x that. So we're risking 50 points, and then our target, the R multiplier, we can have that set to 2. So it's basically risking this 50 points to make 100 points, so 2 to 1. We're going to show the opening range lines, so show the midline, show the stop and target with the signal arrows. And one thing I would recommend is always have the ability to log your signals to the message log so you can go backwards and see if there's any issues. So I'll just do yes there. And then these are all the subgraphs. What I'll first do though is press apply and OK, so we can see what it looks like right now. All right, so for me right now it's Sunday and extended hours. So what I need to do here is go to my chart, and I'm just going to turn off extended hours. So I have my evening session. I'm going to turn this to off. So flip this off, press OK. It's going to recalculate real quick and show me only real time market hours. So here's the first strategy that we see here. So if I increase this size a little bit. All right, so now I'm zoomed in a little bit more. What you'll see here is we have our market open at 6:30, and then we can see these first lines here draw at our 7 o'clock candle here. So we have our high here and our low here, and then this is the opening range that drew after the high and the low were defined. And then what you'll see here is this arrow is pointing up, so it would be a breakout long, and that's 5 confirmation candles outside. So it confirmed 5 here, went long, and then it would have hit target. Looks like if we look at our day on Friday, a little bit volatile, but we would have hit the target at about 12:30 or 12:29 here. So now if we go back, and if we want to go back to our study and define a couple different things just to see it change in real time. If you wanted to have our opening range high defined here, so that's the light blue that you see, the midline here, and then the long signal, short signal with the stop and the target here. So all these are customizable within Sierra chart, which makes it really powerful. So if we want to define the opening range now, let's just say at 15 minutes instead. If you like trading the opening range at 15 minutes, you can see it just updated the plot to now read at the 15-minute, and then it changed our signal. And then if you want to use the opening range distance as our risk, we can apply that, and you can see now that it moves our distance here. At risk from here to here is the distance for the opening range width from this signal arrow. All the way up to here would be our target at 2x. But if I want to change this to 1.5, for example, it'll bring our target down. So that's how I would go about building out different strategies. This is a very basic strategy. There's probably no edge in it until you make it in line with other confluences, test your different indicators along with this. But what we can do here is now build our execution study off of that. This is that same study from the top of the video, now placing its own orders in replay. It stays in replay or sim until you deliberately point it at a live account. And what it does after that is on you. I'll cover that in a future video, but if you did want to start with this study and this chart book, I'll share this along with all the other resources I mentioned in that GitHub link. So all you have to do is sign up for the newsletter below, and I'll email you a direct link to the GitHub repo so you can test on your own system. I'll be putting out more and more content about Sierra chart and algorithmic trading. So if you're interested, please subscribe, support the channel. Let me know what you're working on, what strategies you'd like to see implemented into Sierra chart, and thanks for watching.